What's up, everyone? Welcome to the video. We're here breaking down week 1 of the NFL season on DraftKings and FanDuel. We're just taking an early look here. We'll try to build a lineup as we progress through it, and then we'll run the optimizer at the end to see who's popping the most as of right now. This video is being recorded 10 days prior to week 1, so there is some news that could obviously come out and change. But we'll do a more updated video later in the week, going over core plays and things like that. And also, if this is your first time here, my name is Chris Pinnell. I'll be here all season long breaking down NFL DFS with you all. I'm a data-driven person. I just follow the numbers. There's no such things as gut feelings, so I try to put any personal biases out the window. I guess the Browns would be my only weakness, but even then, I'm really not too tempted. And all I ask, if you do enjoy the free videos, is if you can leave a like on them, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or if you just want to be mean to me in the comments, call me ugly. I don't really care either way, but I'd love to hear from you. All right, as always, we will start with the quarterback position. And if you like anything you see on the screen, this is available to you all and actually for free for the first week. If you want to check it out over on Patreon, I have the entire slate statted out, projections, optimizer, cheat sheet, everything you need. Color coded nice and neat, so it's quite easy to follow. But anyway, let's get into the quarterbacks here. And up top, we have the man, Joe Burrow, $7,100 on DK, $79 on FanDuel. I like this game from a tournament perspective just because we have a 1.5 point spread, 47.5 over under, which is one of the best games, at least game environment wise, on the slate. And plus, we know Joe Burrow, one of the best quarterbacks in football, maybe the second best behind Patrick Mahomes. You can make it arguable with guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, but he's right up there in the top 5. And if you're looking at his numbers on the season, over 2 touchdowns per game, they threw the ball a lot, 35 times per game. And he has elite weapons. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. You have Irv Smith, a tight end now, who we know has some decent upside. And this game in general, just lots of good offensive pieces, because on the other side, you have Deshaun Watson, who I'm hoping looks a little bit better this season. You have Nick Chubb. No more Kareem Hunt, but Jerome Ford in the backfield as RB2. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, a nice addition for the Cleveland Browns. Donovan Peoples-Jones. You have the new rookie wide receiver, who's a big body. So there's plenty of options in this game. So from a tournament perspective, I think this makes a lot of sense. Wouldn't get there in cash games personally, but I think in GPPs, you can certainly load up on this. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be super low owned, but there's certainly lots of pieces to get to. Dropping then Justin Herbert at $6,900, the most expensive QB on FanDuel, at least the ones that we're looking at. $8,100 over there. And I know we talked about the Browns and the Bengals having a good game environment, but this one's probably the top on the entire slate. We do not have the Chiefs and the Detroit Lions on the main slate. They're going to be in the showdown. They have a 54.5 point over under, but with the Chargers and Dolphins here, we have a 50.5, which is currently the highest on the slate, only a 2.5 point spread. And the Chargers have a 26.5 implied team total. So we're going to have some pretty heavy ownership overall in this game. You have Justin Herbert, you have Tua, who we're about to talk about. You have excellent wide receivers in Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, good running back in Austin Eckler. Then on the other side of this game, you have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Jeff Wilson out. Looks like it's going to be the Raheem Mostert show. So I'm looking forward to this game. It's definitely going to garner a lot of ownership. It's going to be very popular for cash games. But that's not to say you still can't get there in tournaments. But Justin Herbert's one of the top cash options for quarterbacks this week if you are spending a little bit of money. I do think a lot of people will spend down just to get in some better running backs and wide receivers, which I totally understand. But I'm liking Herbert here a lot. Should throw the ball a ton in this game. If I'm looking at the QB stats here, I think I have him for the most pass attempts of any quarterback on the main slate here. Yeah, I got him at 39.8, 277 yards, just under 2 touchdowns, and some overall pretty solid numbers, just under 19 DraftKings points. Now, obviously, some of these rushing quarterbacks, a little bit more expensive, are going to grade out a little bit better, but just one of those things that you can get access to if you want to see the entire slate statted out. I do have this for all positions, in which you could use for props, prize picks, underdog, and things like that, which if you are a new user over there, promo code CPEN will get you a deposit match bonus up to $100 in the link down below in the description or the pinned comment. And I should mention the promos that both sites are running right now. So Prize Picks has Dak Prescott set at 0.5 passing yards. Easy money over on that. Obviously, you have to find your best pairing selection with that. You can use a site like OddsJam to help you find the best selections, or you can select some of the projections that I have. And also on Underdog, you have Patrick Mahomes at 0.5 passing yards. And also for new users, you obviously get the deposit match bonus up to $100, but you also get a special mystery pick'em. So go in the lobby, check out what you got, and take advantage of everything you can. Then on the flip side of this game, hard not to like Tua. Elite weapons, pretty much everything I said for Herbert can be said for Tua. Both these guys don't really run the ball much. When you have the weapons that they do, a lot of things can work well. And like I said, this game should be very high scoring. So I am super excited about it. Plus, if you are someone that really cares about matchups, Miami Dolphins last season, which I hate to use last season's numbers because a lot of things can change defensively, but I don't expect the Dolphins defense to be anything too spectacular. And they were 25th DVA versus the pass and allowing the 3rd most points per game to the quarterback position. Then we have Kirk Cousins, $6,300. He's playing at home in the Dome, 26 point implied team total, which is only a half point off the Los Angeles Chargers. 6.5 point spread here. And I like him. He is a guy that can garner a ton of passing yards, especially when you have the best wide receiver in football, Justin Jefferson, back there. They have a new addition in Jordan Addison. KJ Osborne's no slouch, and then you have one of the best tight ends in football, TJ Hawkinson. So this is definitely a great offense to want to get exposure to most weeks this season. Plus, our defense isn't that great, and they lost Dalvin Cook. So I think this is going to be a heavy reliance on Kirk Cousins in the passing game this season. Averaged just under 270 passing yards per game last year. I'm not too concerned about this Tampa defense and both teams. Their pace of play last year, which is near the tops of the charts, which is what we want for DFS purposes because it just leads to more opportunity. So I think Cousins is totally fine in tournaments. And if you're using him, you basically have to use Justin Jefferson. Not like that's a bad thing or anything. It does feel very good to do it. Geno Smith, $6,100, a 26.5 implied team total, which is tied for the most with the Los Angeles Chargers. And Geno Smith, I mean, he was pretty darn good last year. We're getting him at a pretty fair price point. We know the rookie wide receiver is banged up, had that fractured wrist, but you still have two excellent wideouts in Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, and I am not concerned at all about the matchup versus the Los Angeles Rams. And while he's not a huge rushing threat, he does offer enough to get you a couple points each week. Deshaun Watson, we kind of already hit on him. If he can just knock the rust off, I think at $6,000, he'd be a pretty nice value play. But from what we saw last year, projection systems just aren't going to like him that much. Like for me, like point per dollar wise, it still isn't that great. But he can certainly be a guy that does surprise you. And I just want exposure to this game. Like if you can't afford Joe Burrow, dropping that Deshaun Watson might not be the absolute worst thing to do. Just so we can kind of fit the same build of your lineup, but just swap your quarterback out if that makes sense. And then we have the two cheap quarterbacks here, Sam Howell and Baker Mayfield. I know Baker's not for the faint of heart, but we'll talk about him in a second. Do we talk about Sam here at $4,900? He is basically free. And if you need a cheap option in cash games this week, I think he is going to be the guy to go to. He is currently my top point per dollar quarterback on the slate. Gets a good matchup here versus Arizona, who is pretty much going to be bottom of the barrel NFL this year. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're the worst team. Maybe not the worst team, but they got to be pretty close to it if they're not. But 23-point implied team total here. They're playing at home, 6-point favorites. Only a one-game sample size from Sam Howell last year, so you really can't take these numbers at face value. But I think he can get you, I believe my projections have him around 230-ish yards, maybe around 30 rushing yards, and obviously chance for a touchdown or two through the air, whether it be on the ground. Did get a rushing touchdown in his one game last year on 35 rushing yards. But if you're looking at the Cardinals last season versus quarterbacks, 23rd versus the position, 21st DVOA versus the pass, allowed around 240 and close to 2 touchdowns per game. If Sam Howell can get anything close to that, you'll take that at $4,900. So if you're looking for a cheap option, he is the one popping the most for me as of right now. And I do hope Terry, obviously dealing with the turf 2 issue, which I think he got in the Philly game in preseason, but if he's good to go, that obviously just bumps him up even more. Baker Mayfield, it's ugly. I get it. I'm not being an old Browns homer, I promise, but he is dirt cheap. And he's in a pretty good environment. This is definitely a step up from the Carolina Panthers last year. Showed some flashes with the Los Angeles Rams, but I do like the opportunity he's going to get here in Tampa. I do think this is a pretty good setup for him. And just for this game specifically, 45.5 point over-under, 6.5 point dogs on the road, so they should be throwing the ball quite a bit. They're in the dome, so you don't have to worry about any weather. And he's got good weapons to get the ball to. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. This is a team that threw the ball nearly 45 times per game last year. They played at a fast pace. So does Minnesota. Both defenses can certainly be beat. I'm not saying they're going to run the same exact offense as throw the ball nearly 50 times per game like they did with Tom Brady, because Baker Mayfield is certainly not Tom Brady. But the weapons are there, and at $4,100, if you're just looking for a flyer in tournaments, I don't mind it. It might feel gross, but you kind of have to do some gross things in tournaments to get different. All right, so moving on to DraftKings here, we're just going to have to plug in the quarterback. And don't copy and paste this, guys. If you're stealing lineups from YouTube, it's an awful decision to make. And I'm just building this on the fly just to try to make something that fits with the guys that we talk about. So let's just plug in Justin Herbert here at $6,900, and we'll move on to running back. And as you can see, we have plenty of options this week. So it just depends on your roster construction. If you're going expensive at wide receiver, which I personally prefer this week, I won't be able to spend up for running backs. Not saying they're bad plays. Again, just not going to work out that way. So if you're like me, I'm probably going to be at the bottom of the barrel there, looking at guys like Brian Robinson, Jamal Williams, Cam Akers, and guys like that. But anyway, let's get into it here. CMC, Austin Eckler, probably going to be like the top 2 running backs every single week. Just the sheer volume they get through the passing game just makes them so safe. And especially on a PPR site like DraftKings, the floor is just so high, as well as the ceiling. I mean, we're talking 7 targets per game for Austin Eckler, 6 targets per game for Christian McCaffrey. These are wide receiver numbers. And if we're looking at the RB stats here, I have both at the top of the game here. So CMC and Austin Eckler, 1-2 here. And I don't think anyone's really too surprised about that. And if you are stacking up that Chargers and Dolphins game, you can play Eckler with Justin Herbert, just because you still get correlation there with the just the vast amount of targets he will get every single week. Josh Jacobs, he is back. Good matchup versus Denver, and this is basically just a volume play. I know Derek Carr is gone. I wouldn't really say Jimmy G is much of a difference from Derek Carr anyway, so not expecting the volume to really change. And if we can get a guy that gets you 20 plus touches each and every single week with a few targets per game, I mean, I'll take that all day below 8K. And he was the RB1 overall last year, and I just feel like the price is pretty good. I thought he would be above 8K, so I think you are getting a little discount there on Josh Jacobs, especially if he plays anything near like he did last year, which I know was kind of tough repeating a season like that for running backs. Alexander Mattison, $6,500. I personally prefer the passing game more in this one, especially on the Vikings side of things. Tampa is a bit of a pass funnel defense. They have been for years now, but when you can get the RB1 on a team for $6,500 on a good offense with a 26-point implied team total, 6.5-point favorite at home, pretty much checks all the boxes there. Should get you 15 plus touches, and if he falls into the end zone, you're looking at a pretty solid day out of Madison. And with no Dalvin Cook, he jetted off to New York. Awful pun, I'm sorry. But, I mean, he's in line for a lot of work this season, but not really too much competition behind him. Aaron Jones, $6,300. No Aaron Rodgers anymore. So this is going to be a heavy dose of the run game here in Green Bay with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, Jordan Love under center. Probably going to be a bit shaky here in the beginning part of the season, maybe all year. I don't really think he's going to be amazing. We will see. He could prove me wrong. But Aaron Jones, when he gets volume, he's usually pretty good with it. 5.3 yards per carry, and we know he's a threat in the passing game. Problem is he just didn't get a ton of work last year, just about 12 carries per game, splits with A.J. Dillon, obviously. But this is a great matchup versus Chicago. Thing is, though, this is probably a pretty slow-paced game. We know the Bears like to run the ball every single play, and the Packers probably won't be too far behind. But the Bears did allow the second most points per game in the running back position last year, and they were 30th DVA versus the run. So good spot for Aaron Jones, and also A.J. Dillon as well. Cam Akers, he's in a pretty good spot here versus Seattle. They allowed the third most points per game in the running back position. It was pretty good at the end of the year, $6,200. And I'll just tell you right now, if the Rams are missing Cooper Kupp in week 1 because he did injure that hamstring in practice, they are in trouble. And I know he doesn't play wide receiver, but that would just be a massive vacancy in that offense. So he would get a bump in some way. So $6,200, I like the volume potential there. Should get you 15 plus touches there, which you'll take at 6K. Javonte Williams, he is a big question mark because we know he's coming off that awful injury from last year. And they asked Sean Payton in an interview, like, is he going to be on a pitch count or anything like that? And he was like, not really something I've thought about yet. That's a good question, which I mean, I'm sure he's thought about that. So I'm not sure if he's just playing dumb. But even if Williams is limited, I'm not sure how bad it's going to be. So it's really, again, it's a question mark. Because if he was fully good to go at this price point like last year, we're taking Javonte all day. As of right now, I have Williams at, I believe, if I can find him, 13 carries, 58 yards, 0.4 touchdowns with just over 3 targets. That's not bad. It's around 14 points, 2.5x, which is pretty good compared to a lot of these guys. But again, that's going to be on a sliding scale throughout the week. If we can get more news on how a pitch count's going to be, we might end up seeing more Samaje Perine than we'd like to. So as of right now, not 100% sure. Raheem Mostert, he got a bit of a bump yesterday, with the news that Jeff Wilson is on the IR, which a lot of fantasy football people on Twitter were not too happy about. But you have Devon Chain back there, the rookie, but he's been a bit banged up. And then you have like Salvin Ahmed. So there's really not a ton of competition for Raheem Mostert in week 1, unless you're some big Salvin Ahmed fan. And if you are, I'd ask you why. But we know he's good when he's healthy. The problem is he is never healthy, but he's super fast. He's usually efficient with the touches that he gets. And everyone is going to be on the passing game in this game. So if you want to get a little bit different and still play this one, you can roster Raheem Mostert. Great matchup versus the Chargers. They're 29th DVA versus the run, 27th in fantasy points allowed per game in the running back position, and allowed nearly 130 rushing yards per game. So if you're looking to get a little bit different in that game and still get exposure to it, Raheem Mostert is your man. Brian Robinson, I think he's fine for cash games. He's a boring play, not too involved in the passing game, but when you're a 6-point favorite at home versus the Arizona Cardinals and you averaged nearly 20 rushing attempts per game last year, I do like Robinson. Now, Gibson's the pass catcher, but this is one of those weeks where I think Brian Robinson makes more sense. And if he can roll into the end zone, you're going to be sitting pretty good at $5,100. And Jamal Williams, he might be just in play just because he's the only guy left. You have Miller, who's banged up, the rookie. Then you have Alvin Kamara suspended. And outside of that, there's really not much else in that backfield. So Williams, he was the king of the 1-yard touchdown plunge last year. I would take that again. We don't need much. I have him projected for around 15 carries. I believe around 70 yards, and obviously there's always a potential for the touchdown. Now, Tennessee's pretty good versus the run, I will say. They were a pass funnel defense last year. They were first DVA versus the run on the 4th fewest points per game to running back position, but when you're like the only guy in the backfield, you're still going to be playable, and he's a 3-point favorite at home. Now, we'll see on the health of the other backs. Obviously, Quara's not playing, but Miller is going to be a bit of a question mark, so I don't have all the answers as of right now, but I will tell you right now, Williams, projection-wise, doesn't look too bad point per dollar. All right, so moving back over to our lineup, I'm probably going to have to get some cheaper running backs because my plan is to spend up at the wide receiver position. So we'll probably just plug in Brian Robinson here at $5,100. And then if we can afford K-makers, I would like to. If I can't, dropping down to Jamal Williams might not be the worst option. But I also like Aaron Jones too, so it's kind of tough. I think more people will go to Cam Akers as of right now, so we'll just roll with Aaron Jones there, but it's interchangeable. And if we happen to need extra $100 in savings, we'll swap off Jones to Cam Akers with no problem. All right, so moving on to wide receiver, I try to keep this as simple as possible because if you're just going to sit here and break down every wide receiver cornerback matchup or just all the matchups in general, it's just a waste of time. It doesn't really matter that much. It all comes down to the game environment, what quarterbacks am I playing, what stacks am I doing, who's my run back options, and just things like that. Just try to simplify it a bit because sometimes it's just too much analysis and you're going to end up hurting yourself. So just try to keep it simple. So for a guy like Justin Jefferson, there's some guys you can play one-offs in cash games. That's totally fine. Or even in tournaments, you don't have to have any certain quarterback like Justin Jefferson because he can get you 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and I can play somebody else, and that's fine. Chris Godwin, you don't have to play Baker Mayfield. He's a fine cash option as well. And Marvin Mims, you don't have to play Russell Wilson. There's scenarios, and obviously you can't stack your entire lineup. But for the most part, I think you guys get what I'm trying to say. Like Jefferson, best wide receiver in football. I'm going to play him anywhere I can this week. And obviously, if you're playing Baker stacks, stack that up with a guy like Chris Godwin or Mike Evans, run it back with Justin Jefferson. That's a great way to do it. Tyreek Hill, same scenario if you're either playing Justin Herbert or if you're playing Tua. He makes sense in all those lineups. And really, they're just my top 2 guys on the slate, and as well as Jamar Chase if you're stacking up that Bengals and Browns game. So as you can see, projection-wise, I have it as Jefferson, Hill, Jamar Chase, which should really be no surprise to anybody. Then you're going to see some of these other guys we already talked about. Keenan Allen's up there, Jalen Waddle, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin coming in as my top value on the slate as of right now. That can change, but for $5,100, I got him for nearly 7 catches, got him for nearly 9 targets. That's around 15 fantasy points. He's just going to project well everywhere, which I think a lot of places will like him too. And I'm pretty sure I saw him catching a touchdown from Baker Mayfield in the preseason. So if we could see that in the regular season, I would obviously be very, very pleased with that. But again, I'm not trying to break this all down. Again, these are all wide receivers that we talked about with the quarterbacks we already mentioned, or just games that I like in general. Stack that up however way you want, and then just fill in the rest of the pieces. A couple guys I do want to single out. Christian Kirk, I do like him. Obviously, Calvin Ridley's coming in, so it's not like it's a bump or anything. It's just kind of even there. Ridley's going to be the alpha dog, but I still think Christian Kirk has plenty of value if it's $600. And then Marvin Mims. So he's the rookie this year, second rounder. Has a big play upside. We saw a 70-yard touchdown get called back in the preseason. Still caught a couple of passes. But Jerry Jeudy's hurt, so this is just an extra bump for Marvin Mims. And at $3,000 minimum, if you're just in a pinch and you're trying to spend up elsewhere, Mims can get you there. I think he can get you a handful of targets, and if that's going to be the case at $3,000, we don't need much. So I feel like every year we have that min-price wide receiver that everyone always plays that's a rookie, and Mims could be that guy if you're in a pinch for salary. And talking tight ends is never fun, and we don't have Travis Kelce on this slate, so at least you don't have to worry about paying an arm and a leg for him, because obviously he's far and away the best tight end. But I'm probably going to just be trying to save money here at the tight end position unless I am playing Hawkinson in Tampa, Minnesota stacks. Outside of that, I'm probably not playing Mark Andrews. Obviously, it's a good spot versus Houston, but I don't see myself personally going there. Hawkinson, like I said, he's a beast in Minnesota. Going to get plenty of targets. I think he didn't have anything less than 6 targets per game when he moved on to the Vikings. So, he's just another nice piece to stack in with Kirk Cousins or run back with Baker Mayfield. Evan Ingram, $4,700 from Jacksonville. Just another guy that gets a handful of targets. Really not too much to say about these guys. 18% target share is pretty healthy, close to 6 targets per game. He's athletic enough to be viable in that offense, and not too concerned about the Colts or anything. Just if you want a cheap piece of that passing attack, although it doesn't even feel that cheap though, nearly $5,000. David Njoku, I like the 2 tight ends in the Browns and Bengals game because they're cheap and they're both gonna get some work. Njoku over 5 targets per game last year. Jacoby Brissett did feed that man the ball, but Deshaun Watson can get him the ball as well. And talent-wise and athleticism-wise, Njoku's near the tops of the chart. Does have his issues with drops here and there, but I do like the price point. And then Irv Smith, a really cheap piece of that Bengals offense, 24.5 point implied team total. I don't mind it. I mean, should get you close to 5 targets. We saw Hayden Hurst when he was in Cincinnati last year. He was viable some weeks, so at $3,600, I'm not going to complain too much. And then as for defense, I hate talking defense. I usually just play the cheapest one that's viable. For me this week, that's probably the Commanders defense, and they are a nice correlation play with Brian Robinson. If you're not going to play the Commanders, who I'm assuming are going to be pretty chalky, I mean, they're facing Arizona, 17-point play team total, 6-point favorite at home. Like, that's the defense you're getting to. Packers versus Justin Fields, I don't hate. I know he scored like a 70-yard rushing touchdown every week last year. I'm sure that's totally sustainable and it's going to keep happening. And then we have the Raiders defense versus the Broncos, which new coach this year, but still at $2,300. I mean, as long as they don't get absolutely throttled. Moving back over to our lineup here, again, I'm just throwing stuff in that we talked about and just trying to get some decent correlations. So Justin Herbert, we need a pass catcher. Now, I would love to get Keenan Allen in, but I know Mike Williams is a little bit cheaper. And I want to make sure I can afford Tyreek Hill as well as a run back option. So we're going to plug in Mike Williams. We're also going to throw in Tyreek Hill here, $8,200, who, I mean, he's just so good. That's about the only thing I can say about him. Tight end position, we'll wait for wide receiver 3 here just to see what kind of money we have to work with. I do like Irv Smith. We talked about him. He's only $3,600. We'll plug in that cheap Commanders defense there at $2,800. We're left with $5,700 for the last 2 spots, which does give us some room to work with. I don't mind a guy like a Christian Kirk, I believe, who I want to say is like $5,600. The flex gives us $5,800. That would leave us with anything from Amari Cooper, who I don't mind, to Raheem Mostert, but not really sure I want to go Mostert in this build, but plenty of options you can get to. Jamal Williams is there as well, just personal preference. I'm not going to fill it out. I'll let you do it. But again, don't copy this, guys. Just build it on the fly. Take more time than this when you're building your lineups. But I just wanted to build something quick that does have decent correlation for a tournament. So we have Herbert paired with Mike Williams, ran back with Tyreek Hill, and then the rest for the most part is kind of just fill-ins. And like I said, just went on the optimizer here at the end to see who's popping the most as of right now. I do not have yet ownership projections, but they will be up later in the week. If you're going to do this yourself and check it all out, again, completely free for a week over on Patreon with the link down below in the description or the pinned comment. Get access to all this stuff. So just did some very basic settings here. Just put 10% randomness on just so it's not completely projection driven. Flex ineligible at the tight end, because if you don't do that, sometimes it likes to pop in the tight ends to make some really stacked up teams, but I don't always like that. And then to get some stacks here for tournaments, we want to stack the QB with the wide receiver or tight end from the same team. And then we want to stack a QB and wide receiver from the opposite team just to get that run back option there. So I built 20 really quick, and as you can see in the usage column, a lot of guys we talked about. The Commanders defense, which is going to be Mega Chalk this week, Chris Godwin, Brian Robinson, Tyreek Hill, Sam Howell. And if you want to check the lineups that they're specifically in, so for Justin Jefferson, I imagine he's going to be in either, if we don't have any Kirk Cousins, he's probably going to be in the Baker Mayfield lineups as a run back option, which, as you can see here, Baker with Chris Godwin, ran back with Justin Jefferson, and also TJ Hawkinson, so I do like that. Baker with Godwin and Jefferson once again, and then pretty much following the same rules throughout. So then you can also look at your team usage here, the games that it's getting the most usage here in the optimizer, and then some other statistics as well. With that being said, guys, that's all I got for you this week. If you did enjoy, even if you didn't, consider leaving a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I'd be more than happy to get back to you. But I wish you all the best of luck, and I will see you all next time.